Won't you love to be over with all the resolutions and planning and goals and objectives and just get to doing? Today, I've got for you a 3-question process that I've used successfully with a bunch of my clients to help ensure that they are genuinely in alignment between what they say they're going to do and what they will actually likely do. What they say is important and whether they actually treat it as being important. Are you just paying lip service in your goal setting, or are you actually doing the thing? These 3 questions literally have taken founders back to the drawing board immediately, merely days after saying that they're done with their planning, because they realized the gap between what they say and what they are likely going to be doing. So I'm sharing with you these 3 questions so you can kick off the new year. Hopefully it's not too late and you will be in alignment with what you ought to be doing. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive consultant, and I help tech executives worldwide create teams worth leading and triple impact per engineer. Okay, so I'm not big into clickbait, so let's get to the 3 questions first, and then I'll share a few examples, real-life examples, and how you can look at it. Question number 1. What are your priorities? The top 1, 2, 3 tops things that you have to get done that are the most important for you. I'm hoping you have the answers for that already. That's not supposed to be too hard. What's the priority? And this, by the way, applies both to you, to your organization, to the company as a whole. We'll get to that later. But in whatever context we're talking, what are the priorities? Got the answer, right now. Good. Question number 2, explain to me your current structure and goals for the different parts of the organization. As in, what are people currently working at? How do you define their current objectives, their current tasks? And question 3, the most important of all, how do you trace what you just said is most critical to what you just said your team is doing? What's the connection between the two? If I can see that clear connection, then I can understand that you are generally in alignment. What you said is important is what people are likely to be doing. However, if you're not, that's going to be tough, and you're going to see how people just go with the flow, go with the momentum of whatever is easier to do, as opposed to really being mindful of the tasks. Before we start talking about how you can apply this at different levels in your organization, first I want to talk about a real-life example. I was talking to a CTO of a startup, and I asked him plainly, what currently is the most important thing for your startup? And he was sharp as a razor. He knew exactly the 2 things that were most important for the company to achieve in that year for it to survive and thrive. 2 things, very clear. Like, I can tell immediately whether they have achieved those or not. Amazing clarity. Then I said, okay, show me the team. What's the plan? How they're working? And they were actually split into pods or squads or whatever you want to call it that were goal-oriented. However, none of those squads had those 2 top priorities as their objective. And the connection wasn't clear. So it was very possible for the team to declare success over its objectives, what they were currently doing, for each pod, each squad to be successful, and yet the company would not achieve its top priorities per the CTO by the end of the year. This is misalignment. Then when I ask question number 3, what's the connection? How do you guarantee that doing this actually helps that? He had the deer in the headlights moment, and he just scrambled back to talk to his co-founder and reshuffle everything, because they realized that they had to change things in how the team was aligned with the work. Even if this sounds to you trivial and something straightforward and there's no way you're doing that, I can guarantee that probably the majority of those of you watching are making this mistake in one aspect of your work, because empirically that's what I'm seeing working with so many people and talking to hundreds of founders yearly. And that's something that people do all the time, because it's so easy to focus for a second on the goal setting and then forget how to really translate that into what people are actually doing. Once you understand that, let's discuss how this can be applied to you right now. I want to start with the personal aspect, because it's easiest to change the alignment there. It's easiest to tell when you're in misalignment, and it's probably the area where you are most concerned right now. I know that most people are thinking about their yearly goals and yearly resolutions, and that most startups actually take too long to come up with their yearly themes, so you probably have a bit more time for that. Personally, is what is the most pressing issue. So, personally for you, what are your priorities? For example, are you looking forward for getting a promotion, for being able to manage your organization as it is expected to grow? Do you have anything in particular you want to improve at when it comes to your personal brand, to how you communicate with your peers, to how you perform as a genuine C-level executive in the company and not just a glorified manager with a nice title? Once you're clear on those, you know what you really want to achieve. You said something. And by the way, if you're not sure what goal you need to be setting for yourself, I have a free 20-something impact coaching framework ebook that you can just get. The link will be in the description of this video, and you can just get it for free. And it has like 2 pages in it. There are just a bunch of examples for things you can decide to focus on personally or for your individual contributors and managers in your organization. Once you're clear on your objectives, the next question is, how does your day-to-day look like? What are your habits? What are your daily rituals? How do you spend your time? Look at your calendar. And then question number 3, what's the connection between the two? So for example, I had a VP of engineering who said, I really want to focus more on the people and not just be the technical person. So even though he was managing dozens of people, he was still in the weeds constantly and realized that he needs to move more towards being a people manager. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's great that you have that clarity. But if I'm looking at your calendar, at what you're actually doing, most of your time is just that. It's just being there for the technical stuff, for putting out fires. How are you wielding your time better? And when I said that, we realized the disconnect, and he started making sure that his calendar had the priorities in place. So he was making time for the things that mattered most. And then when, the eventual fires erupted, it had to work around the rest of the stuff that were already set. Easier said than done, but is possible. I also have a video about your time management, which will probably be somewhere up here. This is just for personally ensuring that whatever you're doing, the habits you're setting, the rituals, how you're going by your day makes sense and actually fits your day-to-day with what you want to achieve, what you claim is important for you. At the organization level, this is actually very much similar to the example I gave you before. What are the team's KPIs or objectives for the year, for the quarter? How is the team structured? What is currently the team's capabilities? Like, what are we really good at? Where are we lacking? And then let's look at the dissonance or the connection between the two. Can you see the alignment? Do we have a structure that's very functional, so you have front end and back end and whatever, which makes achieving any specific target so much harder because we have to synchronize all of those different parts? Or do we have these cross-functional end-to-end groups or teams that can achieve those goals by themselves, meaning that it's going to be a lot easier to synchronize, and meaning that people are laser sharp on what matters? Because if my team has this objective, which is the company's top priority, and I know that I'm going to be measured on whether the team achieves that or not, I'm very clear. If instead I'm part of a back-end team and we have all of these projects in flight, I might just also decide that, hey, I would really like to tackle that tech debt, or I really want to try that new framework or that new service or that database or whatever, because that's interesting. That's, those are actually the things that good engineers do, but not when that's not in alignment with the top priorities. So when I know what I'm going to be measured at, and what I'm going to be measured at is the right thing, we have this alignment at the organizational level. Do that and see how your team actually starts delivering things at a pace never seen before, not because they're typing really fast, but because what they're doing is the right stuff. So we have less waste. We have less time going into things that don't matter as much. And lastly, at the company strategy founder level, there's what are your priorities? How do you transit that strategy into what ought to be doing? But here, I'm taking this, at a higher altitude. When I do strategy work with startups, we talk about, first of all, when we talk about the priorities, I ask, are you choosing the right priorities, or are you just choosing what's easiest? And this is where the dissonance is most common. We're actually setting our sights on things that are easiest to do or straightforward, or just, we're continuing with the momentum of the things that worked last year. I can tell you how many startups I saw where essentially every quarter the goals were the goals from the previous quarter. If we failed to achieve those, it's just copy paste. If we did hit those, it's copy paste and double the numbers, or fudge them a bit. So you have to redo the same thing all over again, being in a startup case of a hamster wheel. No, we want to ensure that your objectives are actually the things that really would move the needle. Can you achieve all of those objectives and still see that the company is not where it ought to be? Odds for that should be, 10%, 5%. It should be that the objectives actually almost guarantee success. And then from those objectives, we need to decide on how do we ask people to do what they are to be doing. Like, do we actually give people the resources they need to get there? If we say that our highest priority is, having a real AI innovation going on in place and not just calling an API call to OpenAI, do you have the resources to hire the expertise or train your people? If you personally say that the most important thing for you is to grow, are you making time to learn, to go to conferences, to get a coach, to do something like that? If you say that the team's most important thing is to achieve that KPI, are they actually seeing that in the work that they have lined up for them in the backlog? Can they see the dashboard every day that shows them progress towards that business goal or not? Do they have to wait like 2 or 3 months to the impact retrospective and only then realize what they have? Or will they be able to every day see the progress? All of those things all boil down to those 3 questions. What really is important? What are you doing? What's the connection between those 2? If you do that regularly, you're going to see how every time you have planning and objective setting, you will get better and you will have the execution be more on point. This applies at the yearly level, quarterly, and actually in every sprint. If you say, what do we want to achieve? What are we doing? Will doing this actually achieve that? Am I sure about that? Are those really connected? And when you do things, always ask, is that really connected to my goals? Oh, it's not. Maybe we don't have to do it right now. Maybe we can do less of that. Maybe we can descope it. Maybe we can postpone it. Whatever it is, you will just get better. So those 3 questions, I always say to my clients, it's not that I come with some, ancient knowledge, like some sort of oracle. It's just that I come with some common sense and having an outsider's perspective that really allows me to look at things and say, hey, those 2 things you said don't really match up. And that is oftentimes all that they need to be in alignment with what really matters. So when we do that, we can actually thrive and create an organization we're proud of leading, because life is too short to lead an average team that maybe is really busy but is not getting the right things done. And life is too short to say that you want to grow, to say that you want to invest in yourself, and yet not do that deliberate practice, that deliberate leadership in order to grow. I have a recent episode on my podcast about bootstrapping your leadership, how to start being a leader even if you don't have a coach, even if the CEO is not giving you feedback, how to get started in that. And if you like this and you want to ensure that you are in alignment and starting to work on yourself for 2025, I really recommend that you check it out. And that video as well should be somewhere here on the screen or in the description, whatever YouTube made more comfortable for me today. That's it. Thank you for watching. If you like this, do like and subscribe. It really helps and helps me at least feel better about this. And I'll see you here in the next video.